other people you'll be matched randomly to people, and I'll tell you more about that as we finish. The expo booths are where all of our presenters and organizations have information about themselves. So I want to introduce Arianne Newton and Thomas Morgan. Thomas was having internet trouble, so it looks like he beeped out of existence there. Arianne, do you want to just say the names of everybody? And
of course, sure. Hi. Yes, of course. Hi. Hi, I'm so glad to be here to speak with everybody and to engage with you guys. So my name's Arianne Newton. I am the Director of Programs at IPSL Global Institute at NUNM. It's a big, long name. But we are here today with Yese. And Yese, I've never actually pronounced your last name. So I'm just going to call you Yese, and you can say your last name when you come on. She is one of the main drivers of our project that we're going to talk to you guys about today, which is a knowledge exchange project. And then we also have Katherine Moore, who is another partner in the project. She is from Cascadia Behavioral Health, and she'll talk about her role in the work that we're doing together. And then there's two other people off stage. One is Thomas Morgan. He's having internet issues because we've had some storms here in Portland, thankfully, that is clearing out the fire smoke. So he'll hopefully pop in. But Thomas is my colleague, my good friend. He is my partner in crime with IPSL, and he is the executive director. And then we have Dakotah Harris, and Dakotah is one of our fantastic former students with IPSL. He participated in our South Africa project, which is the setting for this project that we're going to talk to you about today. And he was one of our student researchers and a fantastic contributor to our work there. So
let's go ahead and have them turn on their cameras since Thomas, everyone, there's Dakotah. Katherine, oh, there's Yese. And there's Katherine, and I'm going to go invisible now.
Okay. But you can still hear us, right, Patrick? Maybe not. Okay.
You're on.
Okay, cool. All right, so yay. So what's going to happen is we're going to each go through a little discussion about what we do in the world and how we've all come together and what we want to contribute with this project. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. We'll be able to answer all of your questions, hopefully. So please, shoot us some good ones so that we can carry the conversation forward. And so I'll just do a very quick introduction about who IPSL is and what we do. And then we'll hand it over to Yese and go through the lineup. So, so IPSL has been working in the field of international education and volunteer service and advocacy research. Oh, Thomas is back. Yay. Advocacy research for over 40 years. And we have a new program in South Africa, in Cape Town. And we're very fortunate to be able to send students and, hey, Thomas.
Hello, sorry.
Hi, no worries. Yeah, this is my good friend and colleague, Thomas Morgan.
Good morning,
and
everybody.
He's the executive director of IPSL, so he'll talk in a minute. But so I was just explaining a little bit about IPSL and how we got involved in this field and project. So, so we have the good fortune of working with many different types of students and other participants, adults and interested people, curious people that want to know about other cultures, to be able to provide them opportunities through our programming to go abroad, to learn about other cultures, other people, what other people are doing in the way of solving social challenges in their communities, and to participate in just a global exchange of knowledge. And so our programs can be a variety of different types of opportunities, which I won't go through now, but please look at our website if you're curious and send me a message if you want to learn more. So I'm going to hand it over to Thomas to just talk a little bit more about maybe how we got involved with this group of wonderful people, and then maybe talk about, Thomas, because I think this is relevant to this project, is the research, a little bit about what we're trying to do with our research program.
Absolutely. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. One thing I want to touch on is, and forgive me if you did this, Ari, is just the notion of partnerships, and how our name, our acronym IPSL, actually stood for originally the International Partnership for Service Learning. And that name, I think, speaks to how we approach collaboration and how we approach the work that we do. We tend to meet people kind of organically, and the programs grow very organically. And this is through a series of partnerships where we find kind of like-minded people who are really trying to do good things in their communities, often with very few resources, and which prompts us then to really dig deep, collaborate, be creative, and very much think outside the box. Excuse me. So we like to think of ourselves as disruptors, not only in higher ed, but in global education. And one of the more recent developments that we started was, and through, again, a series of connections and partnerships, and internally assessing what our resources are, is an advocacy research program. And what this is an extension of the notion of service. When we think of service, we often think of kind of very hands-on direct service with the client population, which is, of course, service and much needed service. But there are also more kind of indirect types of service. And research is one of those types of opportunities that we've created for students and other participants, including professionals in their fields, to support the work of the NGOs and grassroots organizations on the ground with kind of community-based participatory research projects. So we work with students. What does that look like? So we work with students and community organizations and query them about what it is you need in your community. What kind of information or data sets or program evaluations would you like to see to help you do your work, to help you serve your constituency?
Thomas froze. He'll pop on, I'm sure, in a moment. We're cursing the storms, but we're loving the storms. I'll pick up to finish that thought. So we really value the partnership angle of all the work that we do, including data collection for our organizations that are often you don't have the resources to collect the information that they need. And Yesse is going to speak a lot more about that, and so is Dakotah, because he did participate in collecting data for Streetscapes, and he is a researcher. So that is a really key piece of IPSL, because we do view this as really needed service. And we want to be able to put people out in the world to assist our organizations, which often just don't have the bandwidth or the people power to, or maybe even the knowledge about how to do social behavioral research in a way that leads to data that is meaningful. And because it is a skill set. And so we're here to do as much as we can to help them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, and she's going to talk about herself, her organization, which is amazing, and I'm so blessed to be able to experience it. And then she's going to talk about the partnership and the program, and maybe a little bit about the grant.
I think you can hear me now. Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Arianne, and hello, everybody. It's kind of funny. It seems like I'm speaking from the future because it's Friday night where I am at, and I believe you're still lagging behind. So I wish I could give you perhaps more insightful messages, but it'll have to now be sufficient that I'll speak about myself and streetscapes. So my name is Jesse, my surname is Laitinen. I am a product of international cooperation because South Africa is actually my 5th country that I live in. I have been more outside of Finland, where I was born, than inside there. So South Africa has been my home almost for 25 years, though. So this seems to be the closest thing to home. Streetscapes is a program, quite a sizable program under a national NGO called Khulisa Social Solutions. Khulisa has been working for over 20 years in offender rehabilitation and victim empowerment. And Streetscapes came about because of some of the issues that the courts where Khulisa operates were experiencing with homeless people. And homelessness, it's also another international issue that within, declining economies and more accessible, available, affordable drugs, the streets are kind of exploding from people living on them, but also using drugs. And that comes often with many social issues. And South Africa and Cape Town is not alone in trying to find more effective ways to deal with these urban issues. And sadly, almost everywhere in the world, the lens that we tend to use is very narrow public disorder lens. And it has led to very punitive approaches, which unfortunately, if we look at the issue through harm reduction lens, tends to just make the problems bigger for everybody. More expensive, less effective, more mental strain, more mental stress in our client population. So Streetscapes really came about as a community-based laboratory on how could we deal with these issues more. And the partnership with IPSL is part of our search of knowledge and partners in terms of looking at what works elsewhere in the world. Arianne, did you want me to go into Streetscapes, the program, already now, or should we finish the questions?
No, you can speak about your project and Streetscapes, the program.
All right. So just that everybody remembers that, we talk about these issues as if they are isms and as if they are these kind of clinical facts, but we're talking about people. And one of the reasons why I'm driven to do this work is that I grew up having a mental health issue as a young person that was identified or diagnosed only much later in my life. Autism, and especially highly performing autistic people, were not known, and women were not known when I was young, but it meant that I had huge issues in my behavior as a kid and grew up for the first 15 years of my life hearing it from everybody that I was a bad person because my behavior was so impossible. And what happens then, as we all know, you kind of integrate these into your persona, and being ostracized. I remember as a kid, the idea of not being part of a group is it's just about the scariest thing you can experience. And it does great harm in your attachment and your ability to trust and build social connections that already was very difficult for me because just the way that I'm wired. So I found about age of 12, substances, drugs and alcohol, and anybody who says that they don't work has not needed them because they surely work and they work very well. The problem is, of course, that they lead to many bigger issues on a longer term. So when I speak of Streetscapes, I speak of personal experience and why I learned that there must be better ways to deal with it. Now, my lucky point was that I was in Finland that has so many safety nets and so much resources and families are doing well, that I was caught in time and I didn't have to spiral out of control completely. In South Africa, women, children with the same experience end up somewhere very different. So we often go with our beneficiaries and share our stories, not as a founder and director of an organization, but two women explaining how important the environmental factors are in your life, and how when we look at addiction, for instance, we tend to look at it either as a disease or a moral failing, and neither one of those are completely right. And I'm going to chat about that a little later. But so Streetscapes was born from this idea that we need to test what would work better in a country that has very little resources and where government services are very strained. And we started the work by doing participatory research and finding out from people that were rotating through the criminal justice system and that had spent long time on the streets, what is it that they would like? And it was fascinating because they weren't talking about social workers or meals or shelters that were on the offer. They were talking about work. They said, we need something that will allow us to solve our own issues. And obviously, because unemployment in South Africa is one of the highest in the world, their chances of being employed are very low. So we've been partnering with the state and various social employment programs to help people get a stipend, low stipend for the work that they do. It's about 60% of a minimum wage here. So it's not a perfect tool, but it's okay. It's better than nothing. The second point that came out of those participatory research interviews was that 99% of the group would have had a family trauma of some sort. Now, that could have been linked to their mental health. And we find that 7 out of 10 of our beneficiaries have more than 3 serious, severe childhood traumas. So this already, there's a link. The problems didn't start later in life. They most of the time start early in life, as I know myself. Now, combine that trauma and that psychosocial need for psychosocial services and the work, we built the program around those 2 pillars in the beginning. We created entry-level work, and this would be fixing up areas that are in social decline and beautify them by having community gardens there. And the gardens have multiple purposes. The one thing is there's plenty of easy work. It's quite rehabilitative and healing to work with plants and see them grow. It's outdoors. It gives you exercise. And the residents come in all the time. So it suddenly meant that you had a space for these very marginalized, isolated individuals to connect with the rest of the community members. And with a plant, a cabbage in between, suddenly they became experts and not the homeless person living on the street. Mm-hmm. So it also facilitated very different kind of engagement that has been very healing. Now we've got at the moment 80 people in full-time program, and we have already 11 different social enterprises that employ them. And the funding model has grown now hybrid. I mean, we do sales, we have a commercial farm as well, and cleaning teams that get hired by local improvement districts. I think they're called business districts in the States. Okay, so those were the 2 key programs, the work as well as the psychosocial support. And we managed to get pretty good results. In 4 years, our average record of moving people off the streets was 70% within 6 months. But there was that sticky 30% that we couldn't quite figure out how do we get them to move off the street. They were coming every day, but they said they just can't find spaces that would work for them. And this led to us learning a lot from the States, actually, but also lately from Europe. We found housing first. And we started in 2018 our first housing first site facility, which is a low barrier program allowing people that are still experiencing substance use issues to live in a house as they are without a requirement of them being sober. But if anybody who works with individuals with severe addictions, there isn't lots of people who actually want to use. It's just very difficult to stop. Since then, we've opened 2 more houses. So we now have spaces for 65 people in our housing, and we're opening a 4th one in the next 4 months. So this is doing very well. How this partnership came about is that even with the houses and the programs, we found that a lot of our clients would speak to us that they almost struggled believing that they could really leave their substance use. And I'm going to share a quote that I read in a book by Maya Salavitz, excellent book, by the way, called Unbroken Brain, where she talks about why it's so difficult for those tendencies to stop. And she compares a drug user to a person in a prison cell. Now imagine that cell has a hidden trapdoor where you could escape from that cell. Now, if the prisoner does not know that that trapdoor is there, you cannot escape. And Maya says it's often that case, that although for those people around the person, it's evident that you could stop this, the prisoner, in this case, the person with an addiction, cannot actually believe that this is for them. That those individuals, because often the people around them do not have addictions, the one in the middle, may have mental issues, which means that their belief in themselves, their belief in them being lovable and worthy and having the capacity to go through this door is too low. But secondly, also that the behavior has become so automated and sits in a part of the brain where it's very difficult to change it. And the individuals, if they do not understand how difficult it is actually for this person, that it isn't a complete free will to stop, there's a breakdown of that communication. And when we realized that, we started looking at the possibility of developing peer educators in this field and looked at what's available in South Africa. And we found that there are peer education programs, but not in this field, or the ones that were operating were not very thorough. And we felt that if we are going to do this, we want to do it properly. And because of our good partnership with IPSL that has been kind of around knowledge and how do we create better evidence and understanding of the issues in our work, we turned to them. And lo and behold, I don't think it took longer than 2 weeks, and Katherine Moore popped into our lives. And we started learning a lot about what's happening in the States. And not only were we very jealous to find out how many amazing things are happening at Cascadia and with what kind of resources, but really we're fascinated by their success with the peer education model. And it's just, in some ways, I mean, we are almost exact opposites of 24-hour day, and it's such different worlds and issues. And yet, it's quite incredible how we find that the issues are the same, the solutions can be very similar, and like-minded people who are passionate about their work. We have been able to start planning this project. And I must say our beneficiaries this side are so excited because many of them are very capable and very bored of digging holes in a garden and wanting to use their talents to other things as well. So it has just been a gift, heaven's gift to us to plan forward. Maybe I should stop there and give chance to Katherine to speak more.
Okay. Hi. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. My name is Katherine Moore, and I am the Senior Director for Community Support Services at Cascadia Behavioral Health Care, which is a large community-based behavioral health integrated care organization here in Portland, Oregon. We provide a range of services, lots of different things, serving folks with mental health issues and substance use challenges. So we provide kind of a huge range of different levels of care here locally, including residential treatment, outpatient mental health and substance use disorder treatment, peer support services, wellness services, primary care services, as well as then homeless services. So that's where I am. That's where I am in the organization supporting homeless services, and it is a passion of mine. I think I've been there 11 years, and we have grown a program from 7 staff to now I have 25 staff in that program, and we have expanded our options for people and have definitely built that up. So part of what we do is that we're working to really address health equity, and so keeping similar to some of what Yessi was talking about, those social determinants of health, and so focusing on knowing that like just counseling or just, just talking to somebody and working through it isn't going to address all of the challenges or needs that someone has, that people don't all have the same access to things, and similarly may have had traumatic incidents, living in poverty, all sorts of things that then impact their ability to live their healthiest life. And so a big focus for us is improving health equity, which, helping people really realize and access their full health potential. So thinking of those social determinants of health, the impact of racism, housing instability, poverty, the lack of employment opportunities. And we see these things impact people's health physically and mental health, chronic health conditions increasing and things like that. So over the last 5 years, we've been working towards an integrated care model that focuses around care coordination. So an integrated care model where we really are recognizing that people are, they're their whole person, right? So we're not just going to talk to someone and treat kind of what's happening up here, right? Because it's all connected. And so, so there's a part where we're really, everybody's kind of looking at like that, at it like that. So the primary care is aware and focused on the behavioral health stuff that someone might be experiencing, as well as, well, they're sleeping outside. They don't have, they don't have access to regular shower, food, all of those things. So those things are impacting people. So awareness of that, and then a real focus on partnering and collaboration around like care coordination so that things are happening in tandem and that they make sense together. And so I think it's a really nice, nice way to think about how peer services kind of come into play in those things. I think health equity and moving towards that and improving that, I think peer support services are foundational in that. People with the lived experience can come and really show that there's a possibility, walking alongside and helping navigate through, addressing, because with health equity, right, we have to figure out how to do things differently. Because if we keep doing them the same, we're just continuing to reinforce those, we're going to continue to create the same system we're in. So sorry, I got distracted with the chat. So peer support specialists really, they're folks who then are able to approach people without judgment and really utilize the successes and challenges that they've had, providing hope. And there's a lot of evidence of effectiveness in this, both, data-wise, quantitative, around kind of really promoting recovery, but also qualitative, like, right, anecdotal, like, seeing interactions between a participant and a peer and kind of how that relationship can really look different, and how having someone who has been through it and kind of had successes and also may still have challenges as well, and how do they navigate through? It's kind of I think in a way it ties with the collaboration, right? Because that peer person is also like, there's benefits for them too in their recovery. There's benefits for them too in kind of building their whole life. And so watching that happen has been really cool. And I think it's a really nice frame, even in thinking about kind of this collaborative piece and kind of the co-learning. I think peer support services is based in that. So that's a piece of it. And then we operate, so the places that I'm really passionate about are our homeless services programs. And we have a street outreach program who does street level and camp outreach and engagement, building relationships with people who are sleeping outside, who have mental health issues, trying to assist them into accessing services, connecting, engaging, and hopefully helping them move into housing. And then we have a housing outreach team that provides permanent supportive housing services, which is in a housing first model. So it's a similar kind of a focus with a real focus on kind of harm reduction. And there's not a lot of requirements for people. We're just kind of trying to meet people where they're at. And we have about 300, we serve about 300 households in permanent supportive housing. And so we're working with a really similar population to Streetscapes, which was so interesting in kind of having those conversations early on, because well, the context is a little different, and there's different cultural things happening or different things happening in our environments. I think the experience of folks who have been chronically homeless, people who have been displaced and not have had safety and shelter for a long time, which those are the folks we're serving, and similar to Streetscapes. We're serving. People have significant mental health issues. There's a lot of substance use as well. And similar to what Yessie said, I think that it works, right? People are in pain. It's a really hard situation. I mean, I think that invisibility that happens, really disconnected from community and society and kind of pushed out. And so that creates some challenges. Lots of experience of trauma as well, which has created other things for folks. And then when they're not in a safe situation now, it's really hard to even do any of that recovery work or that mental health work or that, to think about what is next. So with the Housing First program, like our goal is to get somebody into housing and then start building those things around and kind of connecting and helping make those things possible. So let me see. So Cascadia has developed a peer education program. So we employ peer specialists here at Cascadia, but we also have developed the actual curriculum and training. So we have a certification program where people with lived experience with mental health issues or substance use disorders can come in and learn about how to use their story, their knowledge, right? It's really prioritizing that lived experience knowledge as valid as any of the degrees or the letters that some of us might have behind our names, like that lived experience, that walking alongside. And so we've graduated, I think, about 150 peer support specialists. The program's been in operation for about 8 years, or 7 years maybe. So people go through a 10-week course and learn about learn about things about boundaries and self-care, which is really important in peer work. Learning about kind of some of the different factors going on for folks, some things about mental health, some things about substance use, as well as how to use their story, in a way that's not exploitive to them, but like really an it's an empowering kind of a piece, right? How to use your story to share with others, which in mental health is something that, has not always been seen as positive. And so I think it's been also fascinating to see kind of the adjustments that happen with other services then, because it becomes where these services that may happen way up here in this very kind of traditionally clinically way, and this is clinical services for sure, but it's way more person-centered. I think it's an opportunity for people to really connect to and think about that recovery isn't just one thing, right? It's like, what does recovery look like for me? And this person did it, and now, and so that's the part I think is really cool. So in this partnership, we're really excited to think about how to, to work with Streetscapes and supporting them to think about how to develop a peer education program for them. Ours will not directly translate, right? Because the context is different. So there will be some work that will happen, I think, collaboratively between all of us that will focus on kind of what should it look like here, what's relevant there. And I think the really exciting part about that is that it's not just a one-way kind of a thing. So it's similar to that peer support relationship, right? We're going to support that, but like we're going to gain something too. I think the collaborative learning, the co-learning piece is so exciting. My staff are excited as well in terms of thinking about places to connect and really see what's happening there. How are you doing homeless services? How are you doing housing first work? in Cape Town, and what's working, and what are we doing that's working too. So I think there's also some places where with the peer support thing, we can be learning too, like, what does that mean? What is home? What's important to us? And homeless service is a big focus we have, is really serving the person with where they want to go. And that means being really relevant and culturally responsive. And so I'm really excited to kind of learn about, for our programs and our staff, to learn about how Streetscapes does that, how Streetscapes really looks at like that whole person and the context, and some of the conversations we've already had around, recognizing like what family is and what community is, and how shared housing is more appropriate in some of these situations, and just things like that, thinking about how we can really get people what they need by learning more about things happening, all these innovative things happening. So that is my hope. I think I have one more thing that I wanted to say. So I think that one thing about homeless services in this work is that it doesn't happen without partnerships. I mean, you can operate kind of in a vacuum, and you are not going to get, it's not going to be as successful. You're not going to get all the things. And so this is exciting to me because we have this opportunity to come together and partner, and it's, so necessary. So that's all I have. I will pass it to Dakotah. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess that means I'm good. So as I was introduced, my name is Dakotah. I was a student researcher that was in Cape Town with SA through IPSL last spring. I'm from Tennessee originally, but I'm currently a senior at Butler University in Indianapolis. So that's where I'm at now. I knew for sure that I wanted to do a study abroad program coming into college immediately. I hadn't been out of the States too much, so I was ready to take that experience. I didn't know what I wanted that to look like. And as it came closer to my junior year, when most people go into their study abroads, I found IPSL and was immediately intrigued, mostly because a lot of people, when they think of study abroad, they go with a lot of friends or a group of friends. They go to Europe, they go to France, they go to these big cities and go to universities and take classes, and then it's kind of like a mini vacation. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I knew for me, I really wanted to get into the culture of a place. I really wanted to get to know the people of the place, and mostly for me, I wanted to hear the stories from the people that live there. That's a huge thing to me. I'm a huge storyteller. I love to tell them, and I love to hear them. And IPSL was really about that. It was a small program. I knew it was going to be the only one coming from my school. Going to Cape Town was somewhere I'd always wanted to go. I'd always wanted to go to the continent. So South Africa was beautiful. I was so excited for that. And as I got more into talking to Arianne and Andrew, who was the coordinator in Cape Town, I realized the experience was definitely going to be different. I wasn't taking any classes at university. Andrew was my mentor, and we were set up for blocks of time once a week where he would teach me the history, a little bit of the culture. And after our first class, he asked me, and he said, Dakotah, you seem to know a lot about the history, and I'd taken anthropology classes before and on colonialism on the continent, specifically in Africa. So I knew about the apartheid, I knew about the history. And he asked, these things, what are you here to learn? Like, what do you want to know? What do you want to get out of this? And I said, I want to hear stories. I want to meet people. I want to know the people that I'm around, and I want to know how I'm different and how I'm similar and how our worlds connect and the parallels that I don't know. And he did an incredible job with that. And IPSL does an incredible job with that. It's not, it was never just, you're going, you're taking classes, you're learning your things, and maybe you get to have fun. On the weekends, it was sitting down with people, listening to what they had to say. And that was just, when I wasn't working. That was when I wasn't with SA in Streetscapes and doing that. So on the side, I was learning all these great stories from all these incredible people. When I was working, we did, SA and I did 2 main projects, but we found plenty of other little things to get involved in while I was there. The biggest one was the survey we did. So there, what I think we talked about a little bit before, but Streetscapes and a couple other nonprofits in the area that focused on chronic homelessness partnered together, and we did a large demographic survey on the greater Cape Town area. So a bunch of the different communities and neighborhoods where we went out and we asked the people on the ground, we want to hear your stories. We want to know why you're here. We want to know what resources you're using, what you're not using. Why you're not using this, or what are your issues? What do we need to know? Because SA and all these other groups are going to policymakers and politicians, and they're saying we need these funds and we need people for this and we need these kind of establishments. And they're saying, well, we have all these things. They're just not using it. It's their fault. And that's not true. They're just not using certain things because they're not comfortable with it. or they don't know where they are and they don't know what they need. So with this data, hopefully we take that back and we say, no, this is what works, this isn't what works. And so getting that large demographic survey and getting all the responses that we did, hopefully will then translate to us being able to go back and say, hey, this is what we need, this is where we need to focus our efforts. With that too, we did, Jesse had me work with the criminal background study, or the criminal report study. So a lot of our beneficiaries can't get jobs, they can't find work outside of us because they don't have IDs, or they have these criminal records that can be expunged, and things that can be taken off at a certain amount of time and they just don't know about it. So I was spending time with one of the social workers there, going into the police station and saying, can we have these reports? What do we need to do? What do we need to get these people clean? They haven't committed a crime in the past 30 years. They deserve the same respect and the same opportunities that everyone else does at this point. They've proven themselves. And so working hand in hand with that was also incredible. Personally, my favorite and probably the biggest experience that I got out of there was not one that we worked directly with Yese anyway. Bongi was a site leader at one of the public gardens, and she had her own little side project. There was a different public park in a neighborhood where a lot of people who were homeless were congregating, and the neighborhoods there were having issues. They didn't like it. They thought it was a sore eye, and there was a lot of problems going on with that. And so we were trying to act as let's have conversations well, these people deserve to be there. It's their land just as much as it is yours. How can we integrate? How can we make you see this as something other than just an eyesore? And while we were there, we met a young man, or not young man, he was my age, 20, named Washington. He had come from Zim, as a lot of immigrants do. They leave Zimbabwe, coming to Cape Town and different regions of South Africa looking for work. He had a friend there who had encouraged him to come, said he would find him work. And when he got there, his friend didn't show up. And with nowhere to go, no family, far away from home, he didn't have enough money to get back. He turned to the streets, and as it is easy to do, got involved with some bad things at no fault of his own, but he had no resources. So he got picked up by gangs who said, we can help you, and got addicted to drugs and then developed some conditions from that. And, I sat down with him, and me and Bongi worked with getting him back home to his family. And while we did that, I had those conversations and I had those stories, and it was surreal for me, as a 19-year-old at the time, talking to another 19-year-old was such a different life, with such a different life story. I recognized my privilege more than ever, and hearing what he had to say and working with him and how grateful he was for everything we were doing. That's the kind of thing that I wanted from my trip. I didn't want to go somewhere where I would take some classes. I didn't want to go somewhere where I could, go on all these different excursions and retreats. I wanted to meet people like this. I needed to hear people like this. And that's the kind of impact that I think an IPSL program, or program similar to it, hit more than anywhere else. You're put out of your comfort zone. I definitely was. And everyone knows you grow outside of your comfort zone. You don't change. You don't discover new parts of yourself, playing things safe. And I think that's what a lot of, I think a lot of programs do. And it's not for everybody, like I said, but for people that have that interest in social justice and change and want to be that cultural liaison between what's happening in the States and what's happening in every other part of the world, and how we connect and how we can build off each other. These kind of programs are what's going to do that, especially for young people like me. I mean, I came back, I'm a biology major. Originally, I wanted to do hard research in wet labs. And I came back thinking, no, that's great change. It's important work, but social justice is where I'm supposed to be. And that is entirely because of this trip, and entirely because of the people I saw and the conversations I had and the way that I changed because of that. So it was an incredible experience, an incredible time. The work they're doing over there is amazing. I wish everybody that's watching us and everyone on the stage could go over and spend a week just working with beneficiaries and listening to their stories and hearing how incredible they are. Every one of them, they're just so kind and they're so hardworking. And people forget that. Like Yese says, it's a cabbage between you. It's no longer the homeless person, it's the expert, and building those relationships and realizing this isn't just someone on the side of the road. This is a person with a story and with value. I think that's what we all want. We want to support systems where people see that. And things like this, they're doing something right over there. They definitely are. And I was so glad to be a part of it. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dakotah and Katherine and Yese. This is wonderful. I wanted to see, before we go to a couple of questions that I see are coming in the chat, I think we should just touch upon, just really briefly, how we kind of all got connected for this particular project. And it really stems to sort of this organic nature that Thomas alluded to. And actually there's a question I think that comes to that. Thomas, do you see the question?
I do. It's from Rachel. Earlier on, how did the partnership between Streetscapes and IPSL form? And I did kind of quickly answer typing, but I can expand a little bit.
Yeah.
So IPSL is lucky to have fantastic community partners all around the world. And at each one of these locations, we have practitioners and scholars doing great work, and they themselves are connected around the globe. And one of our instructors at our Thessaloniki, Greece program had connections to folks at Streetscapes and said, oh, have you ever thought about like doing something in Cape Town, South Africa? And I've always wanted to go to Cape Town. So as somebody who loves to travel, I thought, okay, well, we'll reach out, we'll start a conversation. And that's really how it began. And we started a conversation. We learned about what Streetscapes was doing, Khulisa, Street Uni, all of the different components, all the different programs. And then we began to build the program. And then at some point, Yese mentioned that there was a grant opportunity, and we wanted to create some kind of partnership and expand this partnership through this grant. And we wanted to focus on the issues that Streetscapes focuses on. And I have a dear friend who has been at Cascadia Behavioral Health for over 30 years. He's a wonderful man. And he said, oh, you should meet my colleague, Katherine Moore. She works in this area. It sounds like what you're describing is going on at Streetscapes. Is a place where maybe they could, we could kind of connect some dots. And so really, we just facilitated the initial conversations. And then it was Yese and Katherine and Arianne who really kind of took it from there. And we always like to use metaphors like the three-legged stool. And we think that communities can be best supported through networks like this. And so this is, I think, a really prime example of not trying to recreate the wheel, but rather look where there are already really fabulous wheels turning, and then build a car out of it. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. I will quit with my metaphors.
I want to mention too, before we maybe field some additional questions, is there's another key player to this whole partnership and program that Dakotah alluded to. He couldn't be here today, but his name is Andrew Hepburn Brown. And that took a little bit of effort pulling that out. But he actually was one of the first people that IPSL got connected with through our organic connections. And he is with, at the time he was with an offshoot of Khulisa and Streetscapes, which is Street Uni, which is more the educational arm of the work that's being done. And so it was a natural fit with IPSL's programming because we are all about education at our root. And so Andrew became our program director and still is our program director, who is the one that really is the shepherd and the facilitator for the student experience. And that's who Dakotah interacted with. He mentioned Andrew's name extensively with his experience. And Andrew is a Cape Townian, and he is well connected, and he is a very interesting, smart guy. So all of our program directors are like that. They're just amazing, and they're all local, and that's by design. And so that component, everybody, as you can see, like there's all these wheels and everybody has their part to play. And I think that's, that is both by design, but also by opportunity. And when we pull all these pieces together, you know, the sum is greater. It just becomes more powerful and more responsive and more relevant. And that's exciting to us. So I'll stop there. We just have a few more minutes and we should probably do some more questions. Patrick, are you helping us curate? Let's see here.
There was a question about social determinants of health, which
I
did answer in the text chain here. And then
and so, Katherine, do you want to talk more about that? Oh, you need to turn your...
Sure, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is it now? Okay. So social determinants of health are kind of the conditions that we exist in, the conditions that folks are born, grow, live, age, work, you know, our lifespan, kind of our environment, all the things that are happening. So we're impacted by, you know, people have different opportunities and access based on their, you know, income level, crime rates, exposure to violence, access to healthcare, food, clean water. All of those things are social determinants of health, right? Like those things are going to impact someone's lifespan, their, you know, chronic health conditions. And so housing is a big one that we look at, knowing that, again, it's that thing of like, okay, so someone's sleeping outside and they may have a really serious mental health condition and chronic health things, and we can keep trying to do that work with them, but we also need to address the fact that like this has happened because of these other factors that are at play, right? And a lot of it's based in terms of money, resource allocation, power, and those things, where those, who has access. So that's there's lots of information on the internet about it. The World Health Organization has a good social determinants of health website. I put that on that link on the stage chat.
That's good. Thank you for doing that. There was a question about what the partnership has looked like since the pandemic began. And well, Dakotah can actually talk a little bit about that because he was right in the middle of it when travel was severely disrupted and his semester abroad became a partial semester abroad.
Yeah, I was lucky. I only lost about 3 weeks. So for me, the only thing, I was supposed to give a final presentation with ESA and some of the beneficiaries and people from Streetscapes. So when I came back, that had to be moved online, of course. But since then, I've stayed in communication with everybody from the student end anyway. We, just like everyone else, are trying to stay connected to the online stuff, making presentations, having those little chats. Somebody did ask about fields and majors. I'll just throw, Arianne, you'll probably have to do for everybody, but for me, I'm bio, minor in chem and neuroscience. But I will say the most beneficial classes were definitely the anthropology electives I took. And besides a little bit of stats that me and Essay worked on, those kind of things, knowing how to have those conversations and ask questions and know what's important when you're doing that kind of research, I think is the most valuable thing. But Arianne, I don't know if everyone's bio. I honestly don't know. I'm actually kind of curious to know that myself. How that?
Yeah, no, not everyone's bio. In fact, there's not anyone for any particular major. Actually, we tend to have sort of camps. There's a lot of social science type anthropology, but there's also just curious people, like regardless of what their major is, and they're just interested in others and interested in seeing the world and learning different things. And we've found that there's no one particular major that is more successful on our program than any other when it comes down to it. The tools that you mentioned, Dakotah, are certainly helpful, but really it's about, if that's your project, but really it's about, are you open? Are you flexible? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to ask questions? Are you willing to be a listener? And in a really sort of profound way, in a really meaningful way. And those are the people that are able to get the most out of it, but also to contribute to the people that they interact with. So Thomas, you might want to fill in there too.
No, that you said that beautifully. You answered that beautifully. And I think, like, from the question about how COVID-19 has affected what we're doing, like everybody else, you know, we've had to rethink how we do things, at least temporarily. And I would like to think that we have responded in the most sensitive way we possibly could. We continue to support our communities around the world through connections with our students and our student population. So students are taking courses online as opposed to in country right now. And so we've pivoted, to use that term, and brought things online. And even the type of support we provide to our partner organizations has gone online. And there are many, many things that take the form of what we call indirect service. In fact, a lot of the leadership of NGOs, and yes, I can speak to this, and Katherine as well, a lot of the work that goes on behind the scenes is indirect, and it's not glamorous, and it's a lot of times thankless, but it's so very, very important. And that goes from everything from trying to find funding to, you know, writing curriculum to testing programs, like all those things that are going on in the background. So that has kind of been the bulk of the service that has been provided since the pandemic began. And I would just like to, I think the next challenge is this pandemic is going to go away at some point, and in some form or another. And I want to have some really good takeaways from this experience. Like, what are the things we want to keep and make better? And what are the things we can simply jettison? I know I'm ready to get on a plane and go places. I was born a traveler, and I really want to get back out in the world. And it'll happen. And so in the meantime, we're doing what we can do to maintain these partnerships, support our communities, support their communities. Yeah, just keep the wheels turning.
Thank you, everybody, for that. What an amazing, rich partnership and a rich discussion. It's so interesting to be in this virtual space. I mean, we have people from, you know, all over the world who are having the same conversation at different times of the day, and this partnership that we can sort of share together in this virtual space. It's really amazing. The sun is just peeking through the smoke here in Portland as the rain comes in and clears things up here. And Yese, what time is it again where you are?
It's just come past 5 p.m.
Okay, yeah. So dinner time is happening down there, and Dakotah's a couple hours in advance. Sorry, he's waiting backstage right now. We can only have 5 people on the stage at the same time. So I just wanted to thank everyone, and please send your thanks to the stage. What you can see on the left-hand side that the networking is open. If you want to talk to other people and be randomly matched to them, just pop over there and you'll just be randomly matched to someone else in the conference, and you can talk to them for a couple minutes and debrief what you just experienced. If you want to talk to any of our partners, so we have Arianne Newton and Thomas Morgan, who are from IPSL here in Portland, Oregon. Will either of you be able to go over to your booth and talk to people for a little bit? Okay, sure. The way you get over there is just click on the expo and then find the booth that you want. And Yese Laitinen from South Africa, will you be able to go over to your booth and greet people? So just pop over there. I'll visit you all to make sure all the tools are working and stuff. Katherine, there's a Cascadia booth as well. Will you be able to go over there? And then Dakotah, invisibly, which booth do you want to be in if you have a little time? I'm waiting for him to respond to me in the backstage chat, see what he says. He'll be in the IPSL booth. So if you want to talk to him about his experience, this is so cool. You know, I have a public health and a mental health background. So Katherine, we might have even talked before, and I just kind of was putting the pieces together. And I think you've been at Cascadia for a little while now, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
11 years.
Yeah, so she's been the clinical director over there. Cascadia does amazing work. Everyone who does mental health here in Portland knows how amazing it is. And I'm just like putting the pieces together and going, oh, dang, like some of my heroes are like, you know, connecting with other people in other parts of the world. And Yese is so cool to hear about that. And then Dakotah, hearing you bring that voice of what global exchange means to you and how you wanted to have a meaningful impact, that is amazing. And I know that people got that as well. We're going to keep this chat and we'll put it on a website after the conference is done. So folks, go pop over to the expo or go over to the networking and we'll see you over there. I'm going to stop this now. Bye.